Now, let's bring in immigration attorney and activist Andres Mejer to talk about immigration solutions for victims of crime.
Hey, here we are again.
Andres. All right.
My favorite subject, how to help an immigrant. Making America great again, one immigrant at a time.
That's right. So last week, you teased us with some possible ways victims of crime may be able to get legal status in the U.S. Now, we want you to give us the goods and don't leave us hanging. What are the options available to victims of crime?
Okay, so uvisa, I said before, it was created specifically to help law enforcement. So a victim of a violent crime that reports the incident to the police and is helpful to the police will get legal status, the uvisa, for him and his or her dependents. We'll talk about who for shortly. Right now, let's talk about the requirements. There are 6 requirements. We control 5 of them. We don't control the 6th, and I'll explain what that means. We, at Andres Mejer Law, divide a uvisa into 3 components. The first is the investigation, where we order all police documents, medical documents, court documents that's associated with the incident, and we look for the 5 things. Victim of a violent crime, there are 23 qualifying crimes. Shooting, assault, kidnapping, sex abuse, domestic violence are the most common. Robbery alone is not enough. Here we're talking about mass shooting. So that qualifies. But what happens if someone comes into your house and steals everything? Well, if you're not home, doesn't qualify. What happens if even if they have a gun or if they have a knife, you're not there, you're an indirect victim, that was property damage, but your stuff was stolen, but you individually were not in a violent situation. If you're at home, someone robs you, that we've had clients, they were asleep when they were robbed. That's not enough either. So there needs to be like a felony. There needs to be assault. There needs to be impact. Now, if they come in and they're holding a gun, that's enough. They're holding a knife, that's enough. If they tie you up and hit you, that's enough. Back to Gabriel and Juan. 5 requirements that we control. Victim of violent crime, there are 23. Had information about the crime, meaning it was reported to the police. Doesn't have to be the police. Could be Division of Civil Rights, could be Division of Child Services. It really depends on the incident. But you need generally law enforcement, an agency with investigatory authority. So it's reported. 3, you were helpful in the investigation or in the tribunal, in court. So if the police asks you to come in and identify, you got to do it. If prosecutor reaches out and wants you to testify, you got to do it. If you refuse to do it, then you're not being helpful. You don't qualify. And again, this is why we order everything in the investigation stage, because we need to prove it. And even if you say you were a victim, if we can't prove it, you don't succeed. And if you have an order of removal, or if you're denied, we may be placing you at risk. We don't take a chance with your lives, so we check everything. Victim of violent crime, had information about the crime, helpful with law enforcement in the investigation or the trial of that crime. You suffered emotionally or physically. If you were shot, that's a physical element, right? Mass shooting, there were bodies everywhere. That's trauma. That's emotional. So that would be psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, all of the above. And 5, you're a good person, meaning you deserve to get this. Now, this is where the government looks at a totality. If you just got out of jail for 20 years for murder, the fact that you're a victim of domestic violence probably isn't going to be enough. But so the immigration will look at your entire past and determine what happened here and see if you deserve getting it. Those are the 5 requirements that we can control. What I mean by that is you're either victim or you're not. You either helped or you didn't. If you committed lots of crimes, that's something you decided to do. That's what I mean by control. The last requirement is a law enforcement certification. That's where prosecutor, police department, judge, or other agency signs a document saying you were a victim and you were helpful. Those are the 6 requirements that we need. 5 are in our control. Victim of violent crime, had information about the crime, was helpful in the prosecution or investigation of the crime. You suffered emotionally or physically. You're a good person that deserves it. And law enforcement says, A-OK, you were a victim and you were helpful.
So it sounds like there's a lot to this when it comes to the considerations, and it sounds like some of these considerations are abstract at best. Good moral character. They could be suggestive, but nonetheless, I'm sure there's a good idea of what they're looking for. What if you're a person in this situation, you're not quite sure where you fit into this mold or what documents you should be getting? What should be your next step?
Well, other than talking to me, right? Uvisa is not something you should do on your own. We have plenty of clients that file for citizenship, that file for the green card. Sometimes they screw it up, which is why they become our clients. But a lot of people file and get approved. The problem is Uvisa takes so long to achieve. Right now, it's taken over 5 years. If you make a mistake now, you may not know about it until 5 years have passed. And what happens if you're a victim of crime and your children are now over 21? Because it takes so long, if you make a mistake, the risk is denial, and then normally you just refile. Well, what happens if your child is now aged out? You're still going to get it, but your child might not.
If I don't know what documents I need, how can or how to prove or quantify everything you're talking about? What should be my next step to try to sort that out?
Your next step is to find a good immigration attorney, whether it's us or somebody else. Only because it gets really complicated. And so about a third to 40% of all immigration work that we do, and we're exclusively immigration law firm, is victims of violent crimes, uvisa or VAWA. So we do a pretty high volume every single year. There's not much we haven't seen in this space. And of those, about a third have been screwed up before by another attorney or by someone without an attorney. Give you an example. There was a case in California that hired counsel, victim of a violent crime, law enforcement signed the certification. They submitted it and immigration denied them. Why? The law enforcement certification was filled out incorrectly. What do I mean by incorrectly? The officer wrote, so-and-so was a witness to the crime and helped us in our investigation. 100% accurate. But they weren't just a witness. They were a victim. But because the law enforcement certification didn't say that, immigration denied them and say, hey, issue number one is, were you a victim of a qualifying crime? If the law enforcement certification says you were not, then you're not. And they waited 4 years. Then it took us 2 years to fix that because they denied it, and we had to get a new law enforcement certification. We had to supplement and essentially redo it all. Today, they got a U visa and they're filing for the green card very quickly. But do you need an attorney? No, you don't. Just understand you're going to have to invest a whole lot of time to get it right. And when I say get an attorney, I mean an immigration attorney that has familiarity with U visa. Because if they haven't, yes, can they do a good job? Sure. But you don't want them learning while they're working for you.
Makes sense. Yeah. And look, I can't even wait on hold too long on a phone call. Okay. So I'm with you on that. I could totally appreciate that. Now the big question, right? Everybody was wondering, like, so it sounds like there's hoops we got to jump through, things we got to get right. We're walking a straight and narrow path, right? So how big is this surprise or prize at the end of the road? So I guess, does a U visa lead to a green card or citizenship in the United States?
Or previously, we talked about the requirements for a U visa, and I said, hey, for us, it's a 3-step process, and we only talked about step one. Step one was proving those 5 elements. Victim of a violent crime, had information about that crime, was helpful to investigation or tribunal, suffered emotionally or physically, serious injury, physical or emotional, and good person, right? The last requirement is getting that supplement B. So number one is the investigation, make sure we can prove it. Once we can prove it, then we request a law enforcement certification from an appropriate agency. Which one? Depends on the circumstances. Usually I ask every single one that I can, and all I need is one to say yes. If we get more than one, fantastic, but I only need one. So second step is getting the law enforcement certification. The third and last step is actually filing the case with immigration. Because if we don't get law enforcement certification, you will be denied 100% of the time. There's no point filing and telling immigration, hey, here I am. No point doing that. The only way you volunteer is say, I'm right here. This is where I work. This is where I live. This is where my kids and my spouse and my entire family is. I only do that when I think or I know I'm going to get approved, right? So the final step is preparing the applications for you and for your entire family. And by that point, we know there's nothing in your past that disqualifies you. We know that we can prove that you qualify. Now it's a matter of getting you in line and getting you approved as quickly as the government can. And it takes a long time.
Wow. So for some undocumented immigrants, this could be their golden ticket. Now, the important stuff. How long does it take? How much does it cost? Will it help their family members?
So I can't answer all of those in one question because I'll be talking for half an hour. And some of it, to be honest, we're going to cover next week. What I can tell you quickly is it's taking about 5 years to get approved because there's only 10,000 visas a year. Now, if the faster you file, the faster that time, well, the faster starts, faster you get it. But also, you're gonna get employment authorization through what's called bona fide fee determination. So immigration is gonna do a cursory review of your case. It's taking about a year, and then they're gonna give you employment authorization during the intervening time. We'll go over in more detail. How much does it cost? Why it takes so long? What are the necessary steps? We'll cover all of that next week, so stay tuned.
Okay, all right, you're right. I got a little excited, so everyone will need to watch.
You want to dig right in and answer everything. I get it.
Well, yeah, it's
I
true.
also want dessert before I get my dinner. I get
it. You got me pegged. All right, so next week we're going to hear about it, though. Looking forward to it. Thanks again, Andres.
Thank you. Until next time, welcome to America, an immigrant story.